This lesson is on the Dorian mode. We're going to do a small amount of this on the construction of the scale, but most of it is going to be about getting the sound out of the scale patterns. If you look at the video description below, there is a printable version of the lesson which has all of the scale fingerings, both for the Dorian mode and then for some of the extractions or some of the ideas that we use. There are also links to some of the other lessons in this series. If you get confused about what we're talking about in terms of modalization or any of the other terms, there are a full series. There's probably about 4 lessons before this one that you can go back and refer to. Last but not least, if you like this lesson and want to see more content like this in your feed, go ahead and subscribe and hit the like button. As a quick review from the last lesson, your Dorian mode is just taking a major scale and starting on the second note and using all of those notes in one octave. All right, and that second note of the major scale, that becomes your new root. That gives us a different arrangement of whole steps and half steps that in turn gives us a whole new sound to work with. In this case, instead of the major scale having half steps between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8, in the Dorian mode, we actually have half steps between the second and 3 and 6 and 7. If we play this scale in this position, and out of the cage system, we're using the E root pattern. Once again, if the sound's kind of unfamiliar to you, we have lessons we can send you back to. Just go in the links below. But in this E root pattern, it puts A minor or A Dorian right in the center of the fretboard. So we're going to start in root, 2, minor 3, 4, 5, 6, minor 7, root, 2, minor 3, 4, 5, 6, minor 7, root, 2, minor 3. Remember that we do all of these notes called out as the scale degrees or the numbers, because that helps us when we move into other keys actually visualize these note relationships. It helps us get these sounds out of the scales a lot more in a lot more focused fashion. For most of my rock and blues players, we already know our minor pentatonic scales at this point. And that pentatonic scale kind of lurks within almost all these diatonic scales. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. If we take the second and 6th notes out of that, we actually get our starting box pattern that almost all of us learn. Root, minor 3, 4, 5, minor 7, root, minor 3, 4, 5, minor 7, root, minor 3. One of the ways I like to introduce students to the Dorian mode is to actually take that scale pattern and then add the other 2 notes in one at a time. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to add the second note in. Suddenly, instead of having this, this pentatonic sound that's very specific, you close up one of these minor thirds, one of these bigger distances with this note, and you can either play more in a scalar fashion where you're just ignoring the 6th note, or my favorite thing to do is to sit on that note, like end of phrase there. The other note that's not in the pentatonic scale, that's in the Dorian mode, is the 6th, major 6th. It's kind of our Santana sound right there. if we play all those notes together, you're going to get this Dorian sound, but it's kind of unfocused in a way. A lot of times when I have students where they just learn scale patterns and they just go up and down the scale patterns and go, look, I'm playing Dorian. What's happening is that they don't really know what notes actually make the good landing points. They kind of poke around by ear. For me, I really like making sure that we know at least where the parent triad is in there. So like an A minor chord. Right, and those notes make really good landing points to start with. You know, even the minor 7. But then you start adding in the Dorian flavors. And if you use these as specific groupings of notes, where you're playing just the pentatonic with the added second or the pentatonic with the added sixth, then you can bring in the other note at some other point. Probably the next lesson, but in a future lesson, we're going to pull apart a Miles Davis solo where he does this really wonderful thing where he just basically starts with a power chord in his melody, and then he just adds notes in a little bit at a time. He's doling out the sound. And when I learned that, I kind of realized that one of the best things you can do is to organize a scale or a sound into smaller bits that you can use so that as you try to develop a solo, you've got something new to say every once in a while. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this. The second part of this lesson, which I think is going to be the Miles Davis solo, that's all we're going to do is we're going to talk about the structure of his solo and So What, and how he's able to actually play something really simple for a really long time and keep it really interesting, because he's basically not giving us this whole scale all at one point. He's actually giving us just a few notes and then adding a note and then making melodic sense by adding another note. We'll get into that later on.